To address my tendency to seek constant attention, my family unanimously decided to send me away to the remote hills for some serious reformation. Even my fiancé was on board with this plan. Within a year, I transformed from a confident young woman into a shy, timid village simpleton. On the day they came to take me, I was curled up beneath the old banyan tree at the village's edge, with playful kids tossing stones at me, my face bruised and bloodied. All I could manage was a foolish grin. Witnessing this, my parents couldn't contain themselves. "Why are you acting so helpless?" they exclaimed. After a thorough checkup, the doctor discovered I was both blind and mute, with additional mental health issues. They finally grasped the severity of the situation, but by then, I had become so dazed that I couldn't recognize my own family anymore. The doctor had given up hope on my recovery. I was sent back to the Liang household. My parents kept their distance all day, terrified of facing the foolish child. My goal was to overcome my need for attention, but instead I lost my humanity and became something akin to a ghost. Now everyone in our social circle ridicules them, saying they're unfit as parents. Even my brother faced backlash. The woman originally set to marry him, upon hearing that I was turned into a fool by our own blood, preferred to leap from a building rather than marry him, fearing she might end up like me. My cousin, who always viewed me as a nuisance, stopped speaking ill of me, even though she remained favored by our parents and brother. She no longer mentioned me casually. Today I feel like a thorn in their hearts. No one dares to talk about it. After I turned into a fool, Jake visited me a few times, showing genuine sympathy for my situation. He promised that no matter what I became, I would always be his future wife. Suddenly people began to care about me. But little do they know, I want to take them out every chance I get. That year in the secluded mountain valley felt worse than death. Constant beatings and endless torment, both physically and mentally. Their half-hearted apologies meant nothing. As time passed, their guilt would fade, and by then, I'd just be a burden they could discard any time. Time validated my suspicions. Within 2 months, my family planned to send me to a long-term facility. Jake's mom, Melissa, also showed up, insisting they cancel the arranged marriage or switch the betrothed so my cousin could marry Jake instead. Linda's biological mother was a bartender who once climbed a tall tree, hoping to change her life by getting pregnant. She ended up giving birth to a girl who became Linda. Her uncle, unhappy with a daughter, sent them away with some money and never bothered them again. However, my father felt sorry for Linda and her mother, secretly helping them. After Linda's mother passed, he brought Linda home to raise her. Initially, my mother was indifferent toward Linda, but one day, when the house caught fire, Linda bravely rushed through the flames to save her aunt. Touched by her bravery, my mother began to change, raising Linda as her own. Soon, whether it was my parents or my brother, everyone adored Linda like a precious gem, and my place in the family was overshadowed. I started competing for Linda's attention, but she was leagues ahead. Her tears were like sharp daggers, crushing all my attempts to compete. Before long, my parents and older brother despised me. I once believed that no matter how much they hated me, they wouldn't hurt me. Until I was sent to the mountains. Linda's mother's background was far from respectable, and our family was reputable. Marrying someone whose birth mother was a barmaid was unthinkable. However, Jake genuinely liked Linda, and she had grown up under our roof. She was beautiful and talented, but her humble beginnings were a problem. Melissa's voice echoed in my memories. My mother understood and immediately said, "I've always treated Linda as my own. If you look down on her background, I can adopt her as a foster daughter." Melissa wasn't satisfied and replied, "No need for all that hassle. You already have your own daughter." Mid-sentence, she glanced at me nearby, sighed, and shook her head. "She's already a fool, knows nothing. Let Linda take her place. It makes more sense." My mother was momentarily stunned, clearly not expecting Melissa's suggestion. At that moment, a voice came from the stairs. "I think this is a good idea. Anyway, we already plan to send Olivia to the sanatorium. At worst, we can care for her for life and let Linda take her spot." It was my father's voice. I looked up instinctively and saw him with a stern expression. They didn't realize I could see things long ago. I just hadn't fully regained my voice and didn't want them to find out yet. My mother hesitated. Olivia couldn't recognize anyone right now. What if she recovered later and discovered we abandoned her in the nursing home, stripping her of her identity? She couldn't handle it. She felt guilty. It was my mother who had firmly sent me to the mountain valley for re-education because I was competing with Linda for the role of first violinist. Everyone knew Linda's skills weren't as good as mine, so eliminating me was impossible. But Linda had the demeanor of an older sister, as if to say she should step aside, informing the whole family she wouldn't compete with me for the position. The entire family was moved by her generosity, while I was so angry that I argued with her for a few moments. Unexpectedly, she tripped down the stairs, fracturing her right hand and missing the competition. I became the scapegoat who pushed her, receiving slaps from both my parents, and even my brother despised me, telling me to leave the house. I desperately tried to explain, but all I received was them covering my head and sending me to a remote area with barely any signal. They found an old woman to take care of me, telling everyone I was her granddaughter, sent back for misbehaving outside. On my first day, the old woman gathered some elderly ladies to punish me, tormenting me until my body was covered in bruises. There was no rest or healing. By the third day, I had to work in the fields. Having never seen farming tools before, I became skilled in just half a day, or else I wouldn't have been able to eat a steam bun. When I was brought back, I stood at 1.65 meters tall and weighed less than 70 kilograms. So thin I was just skin and bones. The doctor said I couldn't return to normal. My father dismissed my mother's concerns firmly. My mother hadn't spoken yet when Linda's voice came through the door, tearful, and don't be sad about me. I won't take Olivia's place. I know my limits. My brother followed, seeing her cry, quickly comforted her. Linda, you're just like Olivia. You're both part of this family. Linda shook her head in tears, saying, It's different. From childhood, I've heard you little bastard the most. Even Olivia spread that at school. My background was always shameful, and I longed for a complete family. She cried with tears like pear blossoms, moving everyone present, especially her mother, who quickly embraced Linda tightly. Linda, from today, you're my biological daughter. No one can bully you, and in a month, you'll be engaged to Jake as Olivia. She ultimately agreed. Linda hugged her mother happily and sweetly called out, Mom. My mother nodded, lovingly stroking her head. This scene pierced my eyes deeply. Perhaps my brother noticed me because my face was always turned towards them. As he approached, he saw my dazed expression, and the disgust in his eyes lessened a bit. This must be retribution. If only you had been less jealous of Linda and more generous back then, things wouldn't be like this now. But I knew they wouldn't understand my words. From now on, take care of your injuries in the sanatorium. After all, you're part of the Liang family. Taking care of you for life isn't a problem. Retribution? They were the ones who sent me to the mountains to suffer. They made me neither human nor ghost. In the end, they brushed off their harm with the word retribution. I couldn't be soft-hearted. That night, a fire suddenly broke out at home. The fire started in the kitchen and quickly spread to the storage room. The flames merged, leaving the first floor with no escape. When my parents were awakened by the smoke, the fire was already uncontrollable. They ran barefoot to their son's room and Linda's, calling them awake. Linda's room got no response, and her mother, anxious and scared, pounded on the door, ignoring the danger, until she finally broke it open. After Linda was awakened, the four of them jumped from the second-floor balcony into the pool to be rescued. I lived in the attic on the second floor. No one called for me, and no one remembered me. When the firefighters arrived to extinguish the fire and asked if anyone was inside, my parents looked at my brother and Linda, shaking their heads, saying everyone had escaped. The nanny cried as she rushed to the firefighters. There's still someone. My young lady didn't escape. She's in the attic on the second floor. The fire on the first floor is too intense. I've tried several times but couldn't reach her. Please, you have to save her. The nanny's hair was burned away, and her face was blackened by smoke. She lived in a small house outside the villa and rushed in multiple times to save me, but the fire was too fierce. It burned so much that she couldn't open her eyes or breathe. Forcing her to retreat, she stood downstairs, loudly calling out to me from the attic. When she heard the splashing from the pool, she nearly stumbled to see if I had been rescued. When she realized I was missing, she wanted to rush back into the flames, but the firefighters arrived, and she stopped, pleading with them to save me. Suddenly, an explosion echoed through the villa as firefighters rushed in to rescue people. Minutes later, I was saved, trembling and hugging myself tightly. When my parents saw me like this, they exchanged glances, both recognizing the awkwardness in each other's eyes. In the critical moment of life and death, they all forgot about me. I hadn't been home for so long that I momentarily forgot. My father explained, "Yes, plus she lived in the attic. That place is too small. I didn't notice her for a moment." My mother wanted to echo my father's words. But when she mentioned that my living space was too small, her face became even more awkward. As her biological daughter, I had to live in a stuffy, hot little attic, while Linda enjoyed the spacious bedroom with the best light. It wasn't just bias in her heart. At that moment, Linda cried out, "Mom, it's all my fault. If I had known this would happen, I should have lived with my sister so we could watch out for each other." As soon as she said this, the guilt in her mother's heart vanished instantly, and she comforted her. "Linda, you don't need to blame yourself. It was just an accident. Besides, she's fine, so don't be sad." Beside me, the nanny held me close, checking me for injuries. Seeing my cold hands and panicked face, her eyes were filled with concern. Hearing their conversation, the nanny gritted her teeth and couldn't hold back anymore. "Mrs. Leung, your own daughter almost burned to death. And here you are comforting an outsider who's completely unharmed. As a mother, this is the first time I've seen someone like you." My mother was scolded by the nanny, her expression turning unpleasant. Many neighbors had gathered, initially thinking my mother was a great person for caring for her niece. However, after hearing the nanny's words, they began discussing among themselves. No wonder some say this family is messed up. While others spend a lifetime escaping the mountains, they willingly sent their own daughter to suffer. Their daughter was tormented to the point of being neither human nor ghost. A normal person turned into a fool, showing just how terrifying the torment was. I realized their whole family was cursed by that niece. Otherwise, how could they do such a brainless thing? Could the fire have been set by them to erase their foolish actions by burning their own biological daughter? The crowd's voices were low, but the night was quiet, and their words drifted into my ears one after another. My father was furious, glaring at them with wide eyes. "You know nothing, so stop talking nonsense. We sent Olivia for reform because we wanted her to improve. Come on, forcing your own daughter to become a fool and still having the nerve to say you want her to be better." The crowd's mocking voices grew louder. "It's all my fault. Don't say anything about my uncle and aunt. They're good people. They took me in and let me. They took you in, yet you want to replace their daughter. You're really shameless." Someone interrupted her directly. "I didn't." Linda cried pitifully, feeling very wronged. "Don't give me that nonsense. This family has been fooled by you, but it's their blindness. We won't be deceived. Someone like you, a scheming lowlife, can trick fools, but you can't fool us." Everyone looked at her with eyes full of disgust, as if seeing something filthy. My brother's eyes blazed with anger. "Enough. Linda did nothing wrong. Why should she endure your verbal insults?" Everyone fell silent. Most people present were from the business world, the kind you don't see when you look up, but do when you look down. Their parents wouldn't dare to argue with them, but my older brother loudly confronted them. Seeing this, everyone shook their heads and left, not wanting to meddle in others' affairs. They only felt pity for me and said a few extra words. Little did they expect to be reprimanded by the younger generation. Given that, they certainly wouldn't speak another word. On the afternoon of the second day, we had just moved into another residence. My brother's fiance's family came to our door, determined to cancel the marriage between our families. The last time I was brought back, my brother's fiancée saw me in my miserable state with her own eyes. After she left, she vomited for 2 days and had nightmares for several days. In the end, she couldn't take it and jumped from a building to persuade her parents to abandon the arranged marriage. Her parents initially disagreed until last night's fire, when someone told them the whole story. After careful consideration, the couple decided to end their marriage alliance. Despite their best efforts, my parents couldn't prevent the marriage between the two families from ending. My brother was furious and told that family, "Don't think just because your family's business is a bit bigger, you can bully me. One day I'll trample you underfoot." Before the couple could respond, their daughter retorted, "With a fool like you think you can step on my family's toes? Do you really think you're something special? If it weren't for your grandfather, you wouldn't even have the right to marry into my family. Grandpa is a business genius, having started from scratch, and he arranged a marriage alliance between my brother and me. Unfortunately, both my uncle and my father are mediocre talents. Not only did they fail to expand the family business, but they also divided the family estate, managing it separately, leading to its gradual decline. My brother was criticized to the point of feeling worthless, filled with both anger and anxiety, but he knew his current fiancée was the best choice he could find. At that moment, Linda jumped out and accused the girl. "You wouldn't have some wild man outside, would you? My cousin treats you so well. How could you bear to give up this relationship?" Faced with her accusations, the girl slapped her across the face without saying a word. "What nonsense is this? How dare you speak recklessly in front of me and tarnish my reputation?" My brother suddenly erupted, raising his hand as if to hit the girl, but her father grabbed his wrist. "What do you want to do? Hit my own daughter? It was she who hit Linda first. So what if she hit her? Who told her to have a dirty mouth? From what I've seen, my daughter is still too kind. She only slapped her once." As soon as the man finished speaking, the girl slapped Linda several times, causing her to lose her balance and fall to the ground in a disheveled heap. A cheap person should be dealt with like this. I warn you, if you dare to spread rumors about me outside, it won't just be a few slaps. The girl was very smart. She could tell Linda was the type to spread rumors behind people's backs. So she first made her stance clear, saying she would repay any grievances. My mother's face was filled with anger. "Are you here to protest at my house, cancel the marriage alliance, beat my daughter, and you're not afraid of retribution?" The girl's mother scoffed coldly, her face full of disdain. "Even if there is retribution, it should fall upon you. Look at your own daughter, tortured by you to the point of becoming a fool. How can you have the nerve to speak of retribution?" Instantly, everyone's gaze fell upon me in the corner. My foolish appearance made the girl's mother choke on her words. As a mother herself, she truly couldn't understand my actions. My mother was taken aback and had no words to refute. In the end, the marriage alliance was called off. After they left, Linda threw herself into her brother's arms, crying so hard she could hardly catch her breath. While comforting her, my brother was also thinking of ways to deal with that family, cursing and grumbling incessantly. In the end, he vented his anger on me. "It's all this fool's fault. If she hadn't come back, the marriage alliance wouldn't have been canceled, and I wouldn't be looked down upon by others." My mother frowned. "You should say a little less. After all, she is your own sister." "I don't have a sister like her. Linda is my sister." My mother didn't say anything more, tacitly agreeing with his statement. A few days later, something happened at the family company. A government project that was originally a sure win was snatched away by other companies. This project was crucial for the company's profits over the next 2 years. The entire company had invested significant effort and financial resources to obtain this information, only to have it taken by someone for over $1 million. When my father learned about this, he was so angry he ended up in the hospital. My brother was also taken aback, completely at a loss. My mother immediately sensed there was a mole, so she sent more people to investigate the company's surveillance and eventually discovered that only Linda had entered my father's office during that time. The company's upper management suspected Linda of being a mole and demanded that her mother conduct a thorough investigation of her. My mother didn't believe Linda would do such a thing, arguing rationally on her behalf. The higher-ups felt her compassion was misplaced, and with the project's failure, the company was likely to go bankrupt. One by one, they submitted their resignation letters. My mother was anxious and had no choice but to ask Linda. Linda cried after hearing this and, in front of a crowd of executives, was about to jump off the building to prove her innocence. My mother immediately felt a pang of heartache and urged Linda to calm down. Seeing this, the higher-ups were extremely disappointed, further solidifying their thoughts of resigning. A week later, the night before I was sent to the sanatorium, Linda suddenly confronted me, her haggard face filled with fury. "You're not a fool at all. You stole the documents Dad left in the study, told the rival company our bottom line, causing us to lose this major project. How cruel you are, wanting to ruin the company just to get back at Mom and Dad." She shouted louder and louder, as if she wanted to convict me quickly. I remained expressionless, my gaze falling on the birds outside the window. With a loud bang, Linda slammed her fist on the table, startling the birds into flight and causing the branches to tremble. I averted my gaze. Our eyes met and Linda's face twisted in surprise. You really can see? I cleared my throat and replied in a hoarse voice, I could see it last week. Didn't Aunt Lou tell you? Outside the door, my parents exchanged glances with my brother. A few days ago, Aunt Lou was cheerful all day, wanting to talk to them, but they interrupted her many times. In the end, they even scolded Aunt Lou, telling her that as a servant, she should know her place and meddle less in the master's family affairs. It turns out Aunt Lou wanted to tell them about this matter, so it was you who stole Dad's documents. You don't need to rush to convict me. I have another thing I want to ask you. I've secretly investigated this matter for a long time, and yesterday I finally obtained accurate results. Your mother had an affair with my father. The reason your uncle doesn't want you isn't because he dislikes that you're a girl, but because he knows your mother is promiscuous and you're not his biological daughter. My voice isn't loud, but I can ensure the person outside hears it clearly. Linda was suddenly anxious. What are you talking about? Although I've always regarded my uncle as a father, he has no blood relation to me. You're so eager to explain, it seems you know. No wonder you can come and go from Dad's office freely, while even your brother has to get his permission to enter. You must be favored by Dad, who probably feels guilty towards you. Saying this, I pulled out a paternity test report from the drawer. This is what I received the day before yesterday. You are indeed my father's biological daughter, and there's no denying that. As for whether you knew it long ago, I don't care. Linda picked up the paternity test report and wanted to tear it up, but her mother rushed in from outside, snatched the report from her hand, glanced at it, and her gaze landed on the words confirming their biological father-daughter relationship. She was so furious that she stumbled and nearly fell to the ground. My father hurriedly explained, Honey, let me tell you. My mother screamed and gave him a hard slap. What else is there to explain? You've deceived me for over 20 years. Are you even human? My father had always held himself above others, but at that moment, being slapped by my mother in front of the younger generation made him feel humiliated, and he couldn't help but angrily shout at her. Enough! Can you stop acting like a shrew? If it weren't for you arguing with me back then, making me feel bad, I wouldn't have gone out drinking, and I definitely wouldn't have met that woman. She's as gentle as water. Any man would make a mistake. My mother stared in disbelief, her eyes wide open. It was clearly your fault. How dare you turn around and blame me? You deceived me into raising your illegitimate child for over 20 years. What a wild child she is. She's still my daughter. My father admitted himself. My mother clutched her chest, gasping in anger, and finally fainted. My brother hurriedly stepped forward to support our mother, urging me to call for an ambulance. I remained indifferent and turned to leave. This farce was spread online by someone I found. For a moment, mockery surged like a tide, sweeping the Liang family away. It was truly laughable. Treating an illegitimate child as a treasure while treating her own daughter like dirt. My mother was simply acting like a clown. I heard that last time their house caught fire, the Liang couple protected their precious son and escaped with the illegitimate child, leaving their own daughter in the flames. Don't the people upstairs know? They once personally sent their own biological daughter to the mountains to be abused, saying their daughter was competing for affection with a wild child, wanting to correct her habit of seeking attention. Who would have thought they'd end up tormenting their own daughter into a fool? That fire was probably set by them, wanting to burn away this stain. Damn it! Is there not a single normal person in this family? So the brother of that family's fiancé broke off the engagement, which could be seen as saving a little life. The next morning, Melissa brought Jake to the door. My father guessed their intentions and brought up what Grandpa had said back in the day. But who would have thought Melissa would respond? Your family is a joke now? We can't let ourselves be laughed at either, can we? My father gritted his teeth. Linda is also my biological daughter. Letting her marry Jake is a match of equal social standing. Hey, what a perfect match in social status. You know better than I do what her mother does. She's dirty, and she's not much cleaner herself. Knowing her own identity, she managed to keep her true self hidden for 20 years, showing just how deep her scheming goes. As the lady of the Goo family, one needs a certain level of sophistication, but not this kind of cunning. Who knows if it will bring disaster to our Goo family in the future? Melissa's words were harsh but truthful. Jake also returned the engagement token to Linda, saying beautifully, "The one I'm betrothed to is Olivia. And now that Olivia has severed ties with your royal family, that engagement is naturally void." Linda was very confused and questioned Jake. "Didn't you say the person you love is me? Now that my status is more deserving to stand with you, why have you abandoned me instead?" Jake looked at her with disdain. "We've never been together, so how could there be abandonment?" Linda thought revealing her identity would help her, but instead, she faced storms with no advantages. "My father did not agree to break off the engagement." Melissa left a remark. "The casual words of the older generation don't count. After they left, my father was so angry he ended up in the hospital. My brother alone couldn't support the company, and with the severe loss of senior management, the company soon faced bankruptcy." Linda originally wanted to take the opportunity to join the company, but unexpectedly, my brother rejected her. He, who had never refused her before, spoke harshly for the first time. "You don't have the qualifications to enter the company." Linda still tried to play the Green Tea Act, but my brother wouldn't fall for it, remaining tight-lipped, and the two nearly had a falling out. My brother could accept that Linda was our uncle's daughter, and that they took her in as kind-hearted people, but he couldn't accept that she was our father's illegitimate child. After deeply realizing his debt to me, my brother had someone find me and deliver a letter. I had already blocked the entire family and left that home. Inside the envelope was a bank card and a letter filled with writing. I didn't read a single word, I just burned it. As for the bank card, I checked the money inside. It had only 1 million. It was clear the Liang family had truly fallen from grace. Money, I'll accept, but an apology, I won't. After waking up, my mother searched everywhere for me. She seemed to have gone mad, barefoot on the street, shouting my name, repeatedly saying she was sorry, and was captured by the media. However, no one sympathized with her. Everyone felt she brought it upon herself. More people believed that a late love was worth less than dirt. After Linda couldn't enter the company, she turned to our father, insisting he arrange for her to join the company, claiming she was also part of it. In the past, my father felt guilty towards her and favored her in everything. Now, with his wife gone and his children scattered, he finally faced reality and realized it couldn't go on like this. He asked Linda to leave, promising to give her a sum of money as compensation. Linda disagreed, and the two had a huge argument. When the nurse came to check on the patients, my father was lying on the floor, unconscious. After being rescued, he narrowly escaped death, but was completely disheartened. He wrote his will in advance, stating that all the family's assets would be divided equally between my brother and me. After learning about this, Linda actually tried to run over our father with her car on the day he was discharged from the hospital. My brother was quick to react and pulled our father out of the way just in time. But Linda injured another person who was being discharged. The person had just finished surgery and happily returned home, only to unexpectedly suffer misfortune at the hospital entrance. The man's family was furious, dragging Linda out of the car and giving her a severe beating. The person needed another surgery, but the results weren't as good as the first time, leaving serious after effects. After Linda was arrested, our father didn't come forward to bail her out, nor did he hire a lawyer for her, leaving her to fend for herself. My brother did the same. Not long after, Linda was sentenced to 3 years in prison. The company ultimately couldn't escape bankruptcy. In an instant, it returned to poverty. My brother wanted to make a comeback and asked me for that 1 million. I had long anticipated he would go back on his word, so I left early. At this moment, I'm in the southernmost part of my homeland. There are seas and mountains here, the environment is beautiful, and the cost of living is low. I opened a coffee shop here. Because I make delicious desserts, the business is doing quite well. Although the shadows of the past still cling to me in nightmares, I have learned to smile. Life is getting better and better. One day, a customer was watching television where a news report played about a former wealthy lady, Mrs. Liang, who pushed her husband into the river and both perished. Hearing this news, I felt no ripple in my heart. At that moment, a customer ordered coffee, and I casually switched tables, turning to smile and ask the customer what they would like to drink. The wind chimes on the windowsill were ringing. Outside, the weather was warm and sunny. Savoring the aroma of coffee, listening to the melodious music in the shop, looking at the small amount of money that came in today, my life was right in front of me. Ordinary, yet relaxed.